And it says you are live. So hello, everybody, and welcome to the 6th interview in the Liminality Interview series, where we talk about all things liminal. Tonight, I am so happy to introduce, and this feels really special to me to be doing this interview with this guest on the eve of my book launch. This feels really cool and special to me. So my fellow author, Jacob Nordby, who is also president and co-founder, one of the 3 co-founders of A Writing Room, which is a very special writing community to me. So thank you so much for being here with me tonight, Jacob. Welcome.
Well, I just feel like it's quite an honor to be here on the eve of your book release. What an exciting moment for you.
Thank you. Thanks. I know I'm going to jump right into this because I know we're going to try to keep it to just 10 or 15 minutes. And hopefully we'll get to do this longer on my podcast this summer. But I know from our Wednesday morning writing circle and the Artist's Way course that you're guiding us through right now, that you have been on a journey of healing some very specific traumas in your life. And that, like myself, you encountered and embraced the concept of liminality itself in the midst of that. So can you just say more about that to get the conversation started? What are your thoughts on the intersection of liminality and healing?
Well, I think I embraced the experience of liminality before I knew the word for it. It wasn't until I was reading some Jungian books that it was described, and I thought, oh my God, that it feels exactly like what I'm going through, and this has been years and years ago. I think liminality, the hallway, one door closes and another one's going to open sometime. We don't know when it will. And there's this hallway, and that can feel so endless and scary, as you talk about in your book. Have you ever,
like a creepy movie?
Yeah. Well, and have you ever, I've had this experience on a mountain bike or hiking, sometimes even on a road trip, more marked when I'm on foot, where you're going up an unfamiliar trail. And, the map says it's so many miles, but your body and mind don't know it. And so it feels like every step is like, I don't know if I can make this trip.
Yeah.
Once you've been over it again, you realize, oh, I've been here before. I know the markers. But the first time through, it feels endless,
Yeah. Yeah. We had that going up to Lake of Angels in the Olympics a couple summers ago. And on the way back was so much easier.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. On the way home, always like, where did all that? I thought that took forever the first time.
Yeah.
So we don't have time, and I would love to hear more of your stories as well. But in my case, leaving a religion I was part of as a child and was such a deep part of my identity, I left in my mid-20s, and I had already established myself as a leader in that group and had grown up in it. So it was very much part of who I was, who I saw myself as, Carrie. And
I get that.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. And I think that I'll use that one example of leaving. Everything just felt completely upside down for several years. Actually, for, like, in my case, about a decade. I hope not everybody has to take that long of a hallway, but it was such a dramatic and traumatic experience of losing a self that had been predictable, that had been safe, that I knew.
Sure.
To find the new one.
Yeah. That in between place, I think, is one of the things that's so frightening really about it when you're in the midst of it, is that you don't know how long it is going to be until you find yourself again and recreate. I know at one point I really felt like, in the midst of that journey for me, I felt like a kid sitting on a carpet in a nursery with building blocks, and somebody had knocked all my blocks over. Yeah. And I had to figure out how I wanted to rebuild them. But for a while, I just sat there and stared at the blocks.
I love that metaphor. When I use is, driving down the freeway at 90 miles an hour and have been going this way for a long time. Everything's been fine. And suddenly some of the alert lights on the dashboard come up. You pull over, you look under the hood, maybe for the first time, and all of a sudden you realize, I have to take this whole thing apart. So you're sitting by the side of the highway with a car in 10,000 pieces, and you're wondering, I don't know if this will ever go back together.
Right. and you don't know the names of things.
No, no.
You know? Yeah.
Which is why
Yeah.
I think a book like this one coming out is so
Mhm.
useful. I have several people in my life who are going through stages of the
Yeah.
in-between, crossroads and in between the things. And maybe it's not time to make a big choice yet, but they can feel it coming. Or maybe they've made a choice, but they don't know what, like you talk about here in mapping. Um, they just don't know what next. And so I'm so glad that you've written this and written it from your own experience, because I feel like so many people right now, just the rate of change in our world, in our society, so many people are finding themselves without a job that they were used to, or they've
Right.
moved to a different state, or so many different aspects of change. And so I feel
Hmm.
like this is a really, one thing I want to say about trauma, that's such a big word, or a hot word, and I love talking about it, but sometimes people make it too complicated. I have a lot of
Mm.
people, Carrie, who show up and say, I don't think I have any trauma.
Yeah.
And like, I don't need to talk anyone into it at all.
Yeah.
But I do love the simplest definition of the word trauma is that the event has the quality of feeling inescapable.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
event has the quality. And so by that standard, so many people can look at what they're going through and realize, I feel completely trapped. I feel overwhelmed. I don't feel like I have control of the situation. That's called a traumatic experience.
Yeah. Trapped and overwhelmed are two of the big words that I like to use as well.
Yeah.
And I think if I can riff off of that definition, I would almost say, and can be felt in the body.
Yes. And
Yeah.
must be
Right.
felt in the body.
Yeah. I have chills when you were talking about so many people who are going through things right now and maybe not knowing, maybe not ready to make a decision, but not really quite settled with where they are.
Yeah.
Because I think that's who I wrote this book for. I
Yeah.
think I wrote it for people just on the cusp of like feeling like curious
Hmm.
and like a little uneasy, you know, like something's off. Things aren't quite okay,
Yeah.
and getting curious about that. That is,
I love that so much. Carrie, I have someone very close to me I met with this morning who is in the throes of, you love these kinds of patterns, but the hero's journey in the throes of the abyss, and it feels
yeah.
completely isolated. This person does, walking through this time, and is experiencing tremendous physical discomfort, just anxiety that just
Oh,
feels
for
like
sure.
like a fire in the belly and just won't quit. And I've been there. And so I just feel like a book like yours coming along to help normalize some of those things, give them names, and realize I haven't done anything wrong. Because when we shift from a familiar way of being, even if it was not good for us,
Yeah. Yep.
we shift. The job of that part of our mind is to try to make sense of what's coming, what's here now. And if there's no way to define it or even see when it will wrap up, sometimes people feel like, I have really messed up. I have really stepped out of line here. I should go back. It
Oh,
wasn't great
yes.
back there, but I should go back, right?
Yeah. I had this terror for a while, and I kept feeling like I have culled myself from the herd.
Hmm.
Like it felt there was no choice for me but to leave the toxic places I left.
Hmm.
So there was no going back, but the fear in leaving belonging and community
Yes.
until you find more community is just tremendous. It's
It's
terrifying.
it's so huge. I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of times as we're going through a change, perhaps it's not leaving a church group or getting a divorce or something, but those are good examples of it. But so many different changes we go through, we don't know who we are. The people who are familiar with us don't know who we are. And it can feel incredibly lonely. And so I think your book gives some really good tools for recreating belonging while we're going through that.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree. For me, and I love what Brene Brown says about this, that shame is healed in community. That shame is a very isolating.
Yeah.
Shame wants you to hide, wants the darkness, wants the covers over your head.
Yeah.
You know that feeling, and bringing it out into light in community and connection,
Yeah.
that was just huge for me. I mean, honestly, finding a writing room
Yeah.
and really like jumping in there and being like, this is my home, this is my place, was a big part of it for me.
Well, you add a sense of safety that helps other people belong. So I'm so glad you're experiencing that too.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You know, I think for me, and because you have my book in hand, you're one of the few people who do, which is so cool to me. So cool. You know that like the three big things I love to talk about are, when you're in these places, having self-compassion, like our friend Lou, I'm going to do a shout out to Lou Eddington, self-care, 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 and community.
Yeah.
And connection, and having a flexible mindset, and really like being okay in the hallway. I mean, being okay not knowing.
Yeah.
Were those things that you feel like, does that resonate for you too with your healing journey?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the one experience I had years and years later, after going through another evolution of leaving a whole thing that had been a big deal for me, a little group, a spiritual group, had become a home for me. And they felt like kind of the last tether I had to any kind of sense of safety. And I had moved to Austin, Texas, and was there without, family or friends other than my then wife and three little kids. And so I felt isolated, and it felt like this one group was really my, they were my family. And something happened, and they kicked me out, and it was traumatic. It was so traumatic to experience that, the loss of connection. And I was going through what I look back on now and realize was some form of a nervous breakdown, Carrie. But what was interesting about that was, I'm telling this part of it only to say that in that darkness, in that complete loss of connection to any book or group or system of thought that can provide a sense of safety or foundation, that's, in my experience, that's where I found my own connection. That's where I found truth that can never be taken from me, because it wasn't anybody else's truth, it was mine. So if anyone watching right now or later feels completely untethered, and is experiencing the terror of that, just know that if you go within, if you use the tools that Carrie talks about in this book, you will find truth that cannot be taken from you. And that really does change the rest of your life.
I'm just chills from my head to my toes. That is absolutely spot on to my own experience as well.
Yeah.
I untethered was a word I used a whole hell of a lot. And yes, I love hearing you say to other people, like, just know, going within. For me, the link of, and really starting to write and allowing myself voice and agency, kind of taking back my no.
Yes.
And falling in love with myself and saying, hell truly. Yes, like I have power, and I have so much to offer. And that love affair with myself, I mean, truly changed how it has changed my politics. It's changed my religion. It's changed how I see people in the world. And it's changed how I love others. Honestly, it's what burned this book out of me, wanting that freedom and that beauty for other people.
Yeah. I'll also say that, when I talked about truth that can't be taken away, it's interesting. I'm sure you've had this experience too, Carrie, to look back at the influences, the things that formerly were these, seemingly unshakable parts of a foundation, and to, with perspective later, it's not as if we lose all those things. We learn that they have a different place, or we define them in ways that are healthier for us, so they can be usable. But I think a lot of people feel like, as I did back in the day, I've lost everything, and more than just stuff and money. I've lost all my connection to anything that I thought was true. And that's another feature of liminality, of the hallway, in a lot of people's experience, is which way is up? If everything that I believed before turns out much of it isn't actually true at all, then what can I trust? And a lot of people get attracted toward, alternative information or conspiracy theories and things like that. And it can actually go into a loop, because it feels like, okay, finally somebody is telling the truth outside the usual paths. And I would just say, listen to the voice of love. If it's urgent and fearful, it's probably not in your best interest.
Absolutely. I love that point. I think, especially the idea of not losing things, but renaming them, and having a relationship with them in a whole different way. And for me, I think we've talked about this in the Artist Way sessions a bit. I don't like using the word God right now. It's very triggering for me. But the words spirit and divine and creator and sacred are actually so much more potent and significant to me in my life right now. And I feel a greater connection.
Yeah.
I mean, but, and yes, I totally agree with you about lead with love.
Yeah.
That fear and confusion and those aren't the most beautiful truths to follow.
No, but sometimes they feel so true, especially when our entire system is in an uproar. Our nervous system, brainwave states, we're just in a mess, and it feels like any waking moment, sometimes sleeping moments too, are just filled with nothing but discomfort and terror. And if that is the case, just know that the simplest things can help provide a sense of clarity, such as going outside now that it's turning spring most places in the northern US, going outside with your feet bare in the grass, leaning your back against a tree and breathing. These sound too simple, but they can actually be those things that just bring us back down, remind us, and that we actually know now from brain science and nervous system science, we actually know that those actions expand our vision, take us out of tunnel vision. They allow us to make better choices. And so anything that a person who's listening right now, the voice of fear is saying it's urgent, you must do it right now. It's crucial, all is lost if you don't act. In most cases, that's not true. In most cases, you can sit down and take 10 or 12 deep breaths, and something from your intuition will come up during that time.
And I love the fact that with what we know now about brain science and somatic healing, that we can actually connect with our bodies through breath, and like you said, getting outside, grounding, all these activities to center and be present, that we can actually bypass the need to have logic, and then access our ability to make decision.
Yes.
So much better. That what we don't realize, that we're trying to make decisions in a state when our mind is like,
oh my God,
nope, very, very busy keeping us safe back here in our deep brain.
Well, and you've used somatic and embodied a couple of times. I just want to say how important I feel like that is, because especially when we're going through things that are causing us a lot of mental distress, it's likely we're feeling a lot of physical distress too. Everything just feels lit up and itchy and uncomfortable. And so it can be hard to stay in our body or to return to our body. And that's one of the effects of traumatic experiences. We tend to disassociate. We tend to try to bounce out. And so some of us do that with spiritual things, with spiritual concepts. We'll read, it's like just reading all the books. And by the way, I love that. I love books. I hope so. I'm a writer like you. But the truth is, often, in fact, this person I was meeting with this morning was talking about feeling like it's time for them to put the books down and be with the experience in their body. Yep. And I know in this particular case, that is a huge challenge. So it just made me so happy to hear it. Thinking, because the intellectualization of things is good up to a point, but it doesn't help us actually get to the end of the hallway.
Yeah, you know what's interesting to me, the most powerful aha moment I had about that truth was from your co-founder, Claire. In the middle of the retreat last fall,
Mm,
she and Amy McNee on the little broadcast for us virtual attendees posed the question, what are you hiding? What are you reading right now?
mm.
What are you learning about right now and reading about right now that what are you hiding from by learning and reading about those things? I can't
Wow.
remember how
Yeah.
she posed it really well. And it was mind blowing for me. And I know it's why Julia Cameron and The Artist's Way, like the week that we're on right now, suggests it was a little challenging this week to put down the books, because I did at that point. I said, oh my gosh, I really am. I'm reading and reading and reading and reading because I was convinced that what I had to say wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That I
Yes.
needed to somehow, it wasn't enough. And I needed to, it was just an insatiable learning. Like I just need to keep learning, keep reading.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be never ending.
Well, and I think the mind, um, when it's trying to make sense of things. I remember an unlikely angel showed up in my life in Austin when I first moved there, Carrie. Um, and definitely was not somebody I would have picked out as a divine messenger, but he absolutely was. And he would sit there and listen and listen and listen, because I was processing and I didn't have anyone else to talk to at the time. And that was just before I started The Artist's Way the first time 15 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And Nathan, this gentleman named Nathan Hawkins, he told me about a book by Oliver Sacks, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. And it was, it's about psychology and all this. But he said in that book, one of the things he talks about is the fact that wherever the mind is in terms of its scale of being healthy or not, it always makes sense of where it is. And it says, I am being perfectly rational right now. And so, right, it makes up a story to justify, nope, this makes perfect sense. And that's why we see people do things sometimes that are unthinkable. And we can't imagine in normal awareness how anyone could ever do something like that.
My mind goes straight to politics right now in America, but I love it so much. Hi, Nicole. Thanks for being with us. I see you there.
The reason I'm bringing this up, though, is just to say that in the liminal spaces, a lot of times we are seeking for so much information to help us make sense of.
Oh, for
and
sure.
Nothing wrong with that. Books showed up along the way that absolutely saved my life. And there are times when if we catch ourselves using the words belief, I believe, or concept, if we use the word, what I want to get my head around that concept, probably a good signal to come back into our body, use some very simple things. Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
What can I know? Can I know this to be true?
It makes me feel like, I don't know, that has like a little flavor of extreme or binary language a little bit to me. Yeah.
Tell me more.
I cannot believe we've almost gone 25 minutes, but that's okay. I was hoping this would go longer, honestly, and I let it because it's so enjoyable to talk to you. I really appreciate you as a guide in our groups, as a fellow author, and you've been so supportive of me, and I really appreciate that. And
thanks for bringing me on just today before. I'm just going to hold up this book and say, if y'all have not yet ordered it, it's on Amazon now, isn't it?
Let's announce right now. Amazon just emailed me before this interview, and it is up. It is up. It's live.
All right. I wish we could turn everyone's mics on and hear the applause, but you deserve applause. It is such an accomplishment to finish a book, and especially such a beautiful one, Carrie. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Absolutely. And I hope we can do this again when I make that podcast a reality this summer. And
great.
Everybody, until the next interview, I hope you keep being your authentic selves. Have a good night.